So in the previous video, we have covered the main provision of the Act of 1919. So we have seen up to the point of division of the sources of revenue, and we were to start the point changes in the central legislature. So this point we are going to cover with the book of politics semester 2 of BA. The book is of Punjab University. So let's see. So changes in the central legislative. So under the Act of 1919, the central legislature was made bicameral, and it was to consist of two chambers: the Council of State, which is also known as Upper House, and this Legislative Assembly, which is also known as Lower House. So from this point, you can see that this legacy has continued till after the independence also. That upper house, just name has been changed. The upper house as the Rajya Sabha and the lower house as the Lok Sabha. So organization of Council of State. Let's see the organization of Council of State, which is upper house. So it was to consist of 60 members. 60 members, one of whom was to be appointed as the presidents of the council. Means out of the 60 members, one was to be appointed as the president of the council, and it was to be appointed by the governor general. And rest out of 59 members, 34 were to be elected and 25 were to be nominated. So the 25 nominated members comprised of 19 officials and 6 non-officials, and 34 elected members were to be written in the following manners, and the manners are 20 by general electorates, 3 by European Chamber of Commerce, and 11 by communal electorates. 10 communal electorates, which means 10 by Muslim and 1 by Sikhs. Means basically communal electorate means you can say based on the community elections. So the franchise of the Council of State was very restricted, and also it differed from provinces to provinces. As a result of high qualification, the total number of voters of the Council of State was just 17,364 in 1920. So you can see that the very hard classification of the voter was done. High qualifications was required for the voting rights. Only just in the whole India, just 17,364 was to allowed voting. So let's again revise. In the upper house, total were 16 members, out of which one was to be elected as the president of the council and by the governor general, and our remaining 59, 34 were to be elected and 25 were to be nominated, and out of 25 nominated, 9 would be official and 6 will be non-official, and rest 34 of 59 will be elected members, and of which 20 will be elected by the general electorates, 3 by European Chamber of Commerce, 11 by community electorates, that is 10 by Muslim and 1 by Sikhs. So the franchise of the council is very restricted, and we have seen that it was very tenure of the Council of State was fixed at 5 years. Now see the organization of Legislative Assembly, which is the lower house. So legislative assembly was the lower house of the central legislative, and it was to consist of 143 members. Lower house consisted of 143 members, of which 103 were elected and 40 were nominated. So out of 40 nominated members, 20 were officials and 15 were non-officials, and the rest 130 elected members were to be returned as 51 by general constituencies, 30 by communal constituencies, again based on community based elections. So 30 by the Muslim and 2 by the Sikhs, and 20 by a special constituencies such as 7 by landowners, 9 by Europeans, 4 by Indian commerce. A special constituency means a special representation, a specific representation of the particular group. So once again revise this partition of the members in the Council of State and the Legislative Assembly. So here you can see composition, full division of the composition of central legislature. So central legislature was made bicameral legislature, of which one was Council of State, which is upper house, and Legislative Assembly, which is lower house. So let's first see Council of State, in which we have seen that 60 members were. One was were to be chairman, and it was to be appointed by the Governor General, and rest 25 were to be nominated, and 34 were to be elected. And out of 25, 19 were to be official members, and 6 were to be non-official. And of elected 34 members, 20 were to be elected by general electorates, communal electorates elected 11, and by European Chamber 3 members were to be elected. So basically, of communal elected total 11 members, 10 members were the part of the Muslim community, and one of the Sikh community. Now let's see the legislative assembly house, and we have seen that it consisted of 143 members, of which 103 were to be of which 103 were to be elected, and 40 were to be nominated. So nominated members were the 40, of which 25 were officials, and non-officials were 15. And here the point has missed that 103 used to be elected. So of elected members, by general constitutive 51 members were elected, by communal electorate 32 members were elected, by special constituency 20 members were elected, and by special community constituencies means constituencies consisting of landlords, European members, and by Indian commerce. And we have seen by communal electorates, it means community based election, 30 members in the legislative assembly or lower house were to be elected by the Muslims, and 2 were to be elected by the Sikh. So you can see that very dominant representation of the Muslim was given in the previous 1917 and 1909 Act. We have seen that it was the part of the policy of the British to divide and rule, so they gave the more representation to the Muslims, and due to this, Muslims started thinking more as Muslim than as the Indians. And so basically further it leads to the reunion of the other communities for getting the same rights. And after we have seen that after the Turkey when Britishers goes against the Turkey, then Muslims and Hindus came to INC came together and fighted against the British, or revolted against the British. Now let's see this was the 6th point, which was the changes in the legislature, and we were discussing the main provision of the Act of 1919. So let's see the 6th provision. So increase in the power of central legislature. So the power of central legislature were enlarged. All the subjects including in central list were under its legislative jurisdiction, means legislative के दायरे के अंदर थे. It could also legislate one certain provincial subjects. The member of both the houses had the right to make interpretation, asking supplementary question, and moving resolution and adjournment. We have seen that after the passing of the Act of 1961 and 1909, 1917, the independence of basically asking questions were not given. Ask even the they were then after I think 1907. 1909, sorry, I think after 1909, the act right was given to ask question, but question needed to be given to the Lord before 6 days or a week earlier, so that they can prepare answer of that questions. And if the answer means answer is too complicated, or Lord do not want to give answer, then he can deny from it without giving any exact reason. So after this comes fourth reform, which is after the Act of 1919. They were given the right of asking right of asking supplementary questions and moving resolution and adjournments even. So we have seen in the earlier it was not allowed. So they enjoyed the right of the freedom of speech in the both houses. Regarding financial matter, 40% of the budget was under the control of the central legislature. Number seventh was the expansion of provincial legislative council. So basically, the provincial legislative council was also increased, and but the limitation was that there was only one house as the legislative council, and the maximum strength was fixed to be 140, of which 60 and maximum was 140 and minimum was 60, and at least 70% of their members were to be elected and 20% could be official, and the remaining 10% were to be nominated non-official. So basically it was there like uh, it was like 140 members in total of, if we consider as the maximum number, the maximum member in the provincial legislative council, the 140 members, of which 70% were to be elected and remain 20% could 20% was to be the official, and 10% was to be uh, nominated non-official. And the members elected were to be directly by the constituencies, and the main purpose of it was to represent communities and special interests such as universities, landlords, chamber of commerce, etc. And the qualification for the vote was very high. You can imagine only 2.8% Indians population had the right to vote. And the tenure of the provincial legislative council was fixed to the 3 years, of which the governor had the power to dissolve with earlier, means the governor can dissolve it earlier also if he need, or he has the power of its extension of a minimum duration of 1 year. So again here was that power, a lot of power was given in the hand of the governor. Later further you will see that most of the main power of the that secretary of India was snatched away, but little how in the comparison somehow governor general was given the dominatory effect, dominance power. And the members could ask questions and supplementary questions, and could also move resolution, means the provincial legislative council were allowed to ask questions and move resolutions, as we have seen in the central legislative also the resolutions and other supplementary questions asking was allowed. So number 8 is the relaxation in the control of the Secretary of a State, means powers of the power of the Secretary of the State with regard to the control of the government of India were sufficiently reduced. Many of these powers were delegated to the Governor General, as I have said you. Many of the powers were given to the many of the power of the Secretary of State of India were given to the Governor General, and somehow this given the domination effect to the Governor General, which we will talk later. So before 1919, all the projects of the legislation, basically here we are seeing the what power was delegated, what powers was deducted from the Secretary of State of India or snatched away from the Secretary of State. So before 1919, all the project of the legislation had to refer to the Secretary of State of India before they were to introduced in any central or provincial legislature. Therefore, only a few special bills relating to foreign relations, military affairs, customs, currency, public debt were to be sent to the Secretary of State by central legislature, and even the provincial legislature were to refer to the bills very rarely to him. So the control of Secretary of State our provincial finance was also relaxed. The act provided that the salary of secretary of a state of other a state and other members of his council were paid out of the members' money voted and approved by the British Parliament, and due to this, as the salary and the of the Secretary of State was under the British Parliament, so due to this, the British government started exercising effective control over the Secretary of State for India. Number ninth provision was the more representation of Indians in the provincial executive. So basically, under Act of 1919, the number of Indian members in the provincial executive was increased, and out of 4 reserved category of members in the executive of Madras, Bengal, and Bombay, two were to be Indians. And in the provincial executive of rest of 6 provinces, rest of 6 means which we have seen that in total British had divided Indians into 9 provinces. So in these 3 provinces, two members were to be Indians, means executive. 2 executive members were to be Indians, and in the remaining 6 provinces, there were 2 executive members, of which one were to be Indians. So these members were to be nominated by the King of England on the recommendation of Secretary of States, and their tenure was of 5 years. So provincial executive member had the tenure of 5 years, and all the minister of provincial executives were to be the Indians, and their numbers were not fixed. Means minister also, all the ministers of provincial executive. Here we were talking about the just of provincial executive members, and here we are talking about the minister of the provincial executives. So they were to be the Indians, and the number of members varied from a state to state. Basically, their number was not fixed. So there were 3 members each in the executive of Bombay, Bengal, and Madras. 3 minister of provincial executives were in Bombay, Bengal, and Madras, UP, and Punjab, whereas in other 4 provinces, their number was only 2. So ministers were nominated by the governors, and their tenure depends on the discretion of governor. Means discretion means vivek of governor, means on the basically it was on dependent on the governor ability to think positive about that minister. Number 6th provision of the Act of 1919 or Chelmsford Reform was that it changed in Indian Council. So the Act of 1919 provided that henceforth the Indian Council was to consist of not more than 12 and not less than 8 members. Half of them were to required to be the person who have resided in India for last 10 years. This tenure was reduced from 7 to 5 years, and they were however eligible for reappointment. Means though their tenure was reduced from 7 to 5 years, but they can be reappointed, nominated, and the salary of the member of Indian Council was raised from 1,000 pounds to 1,200 pounds a year. So basically this step was in favor of promoting the Indian self-government. Number 11th provision was the appointment of High Commissioner for India in England, and this commissioner was appointed in England to safeguard the Indians' rights staying in the England and foreign countries. So the Act of 1919 meant the provision for the appointment of High Commissioner for India, and he was to be appointed by the Governor General. So main function of him was to look after the interest of the Indian students in England, and he was to discharge the duty of procuring stores for Indian government, furnishing trade information, and promoting the welfare of Indian trade. And the tenure of High Commission was fixed at 6 years, and his salary was to paid out of the Treasury of India. Number so number 12th provision was the irresponsible government center, government in center. So basically the act of 1900 made no changes in the position of the government at center. Basically in this point we are talking about that in the main government of the center no changes was made, and the position of governor general remained irresponsible like before. He and his council was not responsible for the central legislature, rather they were responsible before the British parliament only, and the number of Indian members in the central executive were raised from 1 to 3. And Sir Tej Bahadur Sapru became the first law minister in the executive council of the governor general. So this was a very prominent basically representation of the that Indians. Number 13th provision was the expansion of communal representation. So basically the communal representation was expanded under the Act of 1919. Under the new arrangements, apart from Muslim, the Sikh in Punjab, the non-Brahmins in Madras, and Marathas in Bombay were given separate representation. So basically, as we have seen earlier, that Muslims were given more representation as compared to that of the other communities. But after the Act of 1919, apart from Muslims, Sikhs in Punjab, non-Brahmins in Madras, and Marathas in Bombay were given separate representation. The share of Muslim was widely expanded, and the provision was made to give a special treatment to Indian Christians, Anglo-Indians, Europeans, universities, landlords, and industry and commerce related members. So basically, one of the provision was the expansion of the communal representation. But however, we will see that basically this bring challenged in front of the Indians to that of the unity of the Indians. The, in defects we will see this, and of which INC had revolted against it also. So number 14th provision was the safeguard of the interest of the Indian civil services. So in order to safeguard the interest of the Indian civil services, a special arrangements were made, such as the Secretary of State in Council was empowered to make rules in regard of the classification of Indian civil services, who was a special arrangements were made. Number one of these was the Secretary of State in Council. Secretary of State in Council were empowered to make rules in regard of the classification of Indian civil services and the method of their recruitment, condition of their services, pay allowance, discipline, and conduct. So main in charge was the Secretary of State in Council of the Indian civil services. And number second was a substantial increase was made in their employment. So basically in the way of safeguarding the interest of Indian civil services, number first was the Secretary of State was empowered to make rules. Second was this their employment was increased. Number third is the provincial governor were given a special responsibility to protect their interest. Means provincial governor had the basically they were argued to protect the interest of the Indian civil service members. Number 15 provision of the this Act of 1919 is that the Act of 1919 provided for the establishment of Chamber of Princes on Feb 8 1921. So the Chamber of Prince was to set up in Delhi by royal proclamation. It's not Queen proclamation. Queen proclamation had come in 1858. It's a royal proclamation. So in its inauguration was performed by the Duke of Connaught in Diwane-Am of Red Fort in Delhi. Earlier, we have seen that Queen's proclamation was carried out in the Allahabad court, I think. Yes, it's Queen's proclamation was given on the Darbar of Allahabad on November 1, 1858, and here the royal proclamation was to be February 8, 1920. The Chamber of Princes was set up in Delhi by royal proclamation, and performed by the inauguration was performed by Duke Connaught in the Diwane-Am of Red Fort in Delhi on the behalf of the King of England. So the total number of provinces where its member was 121 over 121, out of which 109 were representing more important princely estates. Means 129 were very important princely estates, and 12 were less important princely estates. And the chairman of Chamber of Princes was Viceroy. Viceroy means Viceroy was the means earlier called Governor General. So the chairman of Chamber of Princes was Viceroy, and its one meeting in a year was essential. Means at least one meeting was to be held in a year. So this Chamber of Princes was like an advisory body. The body, though this body did not meet with much success, yet it was a symbol of the change of the British policy towards princes. Basically, it was not successful due to other various factors, but again it's given the symbol of the changes in the British policy towards India also, and towards Indian princess also. So it indicated the paramount power had abandoned its age long policy of isolation. Means it's a the statement is saying that this representation indicated that these improvements in the Act of 1919 shows that very big power, you can say very strong power, very culmination of the strong power has been come out of the age of isolation. Means the power which were only isolated to the Britishers only had come out of that isolation and welcome their cooperation to the cooperation, and this cooperation is basically with the Indian members and Indian princes. So for now, let's stop here. In the next video, we will see the critical evolution of the Act of 1919 and defects of the Act of 1919. So thank you.